Party won 18 seats in the 2021 Assembly elections. Despite losing her seat of Nandigram, she ended up winning with two-thirds majority. I don't see any other more representation of democratic voice of opposition than what it is right now. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? I see. Yeah. Rajesh,
Hello.
can you
Hello.
decide? Yeah. We'll take
Namaste.
how many?
Namaste,
Rajesh,
everyone.
10 questions? We have time, right? Yeah.
My name is Santosh. So I have two questions. One to Santanu because I have something common with him. So Santanu what inspired you to transform yourself from technocrat to author and political analyst? And one question to Bhandari ji is, do you see one day one nation? Do you see one day one nation and one election possible? And is it feasible and sustainable in long term?
So first of all, thank you for coming over, and we got connected in the morning on a WhatsApp call, and we realized he's a super senior from like the same college in Uttarakhand now, earlier in Uttar Pradesh, and thank you sir for coming. I think what inspired me, I know I was working, my last full-time job was in Credit Suisse Bank in Switzerland. So by the grace of Ma Saraswati, I think I got the so-called luxuries of life early in life, like sat in a Mercedes car, got into big hotels, lived in Europe for 3-4 years. And then realized that if I think I'm smart enough, then let's solve smarter problems or bigger problems rather than working for someone. And that's why I went back to Bharat and started working social space. At some point I realized writing my thoughts is a good idea to communicate with many. So I started writing, and the writing took me to TV. Yeah. You want to comment on One Nation, One? Thank you.
I will just add to that because I know him from last 7 years. What I've seen in Shantanu is that he has a deep desire to really work for the people on the ground. And when you have a very deep desire and a right intention to serve the masses in whatever way you do, life definitely transforms you. So the first day I met him after that mock parliament session, that was the same intention that he's carrying now. Now on the One Nation, One Election part, see, I do believe there are two ways of looking at it, and honestly I have not made up my mind on it. What I have seen on the ground is that the permanent bureaucracy is not accountable to the people. So if you see generally since the colonial times, it was the bureaucrat who was the ICS then, now the bureaucrats which are there. The people, there is no accountability. So you will see in front of a DM office, generally the person will go like this, ask for a work, request for a work. Whereas for a member of parliament or a member of legislative assembly, if they do not work, or as I said, they become arrogant, the people will say, "Acha, aapko na next election mein sabak sikhata hu, I'll teach you in the next election." So definitely that also gives the incentive for the politician to work. So what I suggest is that the first step to try One Nation, One Election would be, say, 1 year, one election, on lesser election club, and see how it is. Because what I have come across, and there is no personal bias to it, that the elections provide a mechanism for dynamism to remain in the Indian polity. Apart from that, at the same time, it also ensures that the politician is always at check to work. Now, are we ready as a democracy to give the politician a free run for 5 years and then only at the 5th year you judge it? Say for 4 years, there are good men will always not remain in power. We should be ready for situations where, say, bad men also come in power. So if bad men come in power and they don't work for 4 years, and then at the 5th year they control and manage the system in such a way that on the 5th year the voices can be stifled. So that is a very, at this situation, good men are in power. If it's there, so you can try it out. What I suggest is that the way to try it, my basic understanding tells me, is that go for, say, 1 year, one election, club all the elections which are happening in a year, so that in a year there is also a check, and then you can work for the other part of time. And then another year you try for it. Or say have a midterm, so at least in the 5-year period, there should be one check on any politician, whether it is on the state or the national level, which I feel which ensures that the incentive remains which is there. Because I have seen the permanent bureaucracy at max can be transferred at places, right? And people do not interact with it. So this is something which we should remember.
Anyone else? Will take a couple of more questions. Maybe I see some students. No. Yeah. Oh, Satish ji. Satish ji, yeah, go ahead, Satish ji. Is the mic working?
Good evening. My name is Satish Sharma. A presumption of a democracy is that the majority of good people are good people. In any community, the majority are deemed to be good. And yet, in Bharat, we have a political system which denies the democracy, the democratic principle, because the majority of people are still operating under a period and a time of religious apartheid. Dr. Ranganathanji describes Hindus, the majority of the Bharatiya nation, as being eighth-class citizens. If that's the case, and the state discriminates on the basis of religion against the majority, how is that such a thriving democracy? Thank you.
You got the central thing? You got the central thing?
Yeah. I do believe...
You may want to rephrase the question
Yes.
so that everyone understands the question.
So, and just understanding your question correct, you're saying that there is discrimination in India based on religious ground. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Against
majorities.
against the majority coming.
Right.
Well, let me put it this way, that every policy in India which I have come across does not look at either the caste or the religion. It at the end of the day looks whether you are a beneficiary or not, and it gives you the benefit, right? So the state policy does not look at the religious criteria for sure. This is what I have understood. Now the perception whether there has been a discrimination against majority comes from the background where the majority always demanded equal rights, and that equal rights were not granted to the majority on the pretext of practicing secularism, which was not practiced as equality for all, but which was practiced as minoritism. So if you look at the essence of secularism, the Indian ethos and the Bharatiya ethos has always been of Sarv Dharm Sambhav, which is where treating everybody equally. Secular per se has been a word which has come from the West, where there was an interference from the church in affairs of the state. Whereas we always practice Sarvdam Sambhav. That's where when Mahatma Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar were asked to introduce that term in the start, they did not say that. They said we are in a sense that let the society and structure evolve. Unfortunately, since there has been a period in Indian polity in the past, where, as I said, that secularism was not practiced as equality for all, or not practiced as treating equal peoples equally and unequal unequally, it was practiced as minoritism. So that went to an inflection point, and now you are seeing a situation where at least there is a scenario where equality is being transcended on the ground. So for those who practiced minoritism in the name of secularism, or for them it is, say, something which is taken away because you're setting a level playing field. So to an extent, so your argument can be correct, but the background to that perception comes from the fact which I have seen on the ground of many people practicing, at least to as matters when it required practicing secularism in true essence being secular, which is treating everybody equally, it was practiced as minoritism. Yeah. This is where the issue had come, and this is where your conclusion is what has been the conclusion which I have also seen on ground.
Yeah, to my understanding, I know Satishji's work, and he has done extensive work on Indian society. I think what vantage point he might be coming upon is a couple of laws which are still existing in India, which is maybe Waqf, maybe Places of Worship Act, maybe temple control, and these are the biggest blame from the Hindu community on Narendra Modi.
I somehow on the part of the Waqf, when I was reading, I completely agree that on this part, Shantanu.
Yeah. But at least the debate is on. At least finally the Janta of India knows about this topic.
See, ultimately, what do we say? We the people of India, right? So everything has to be debated, and everything has to apply with the spirit of the Constitution. Now you spoke about the Act, the Waqf Act, right? In 1954, that came into place. And in 1990s, Places of Worship Act happened. Now, there is definitely an argument that Waqf is not as per the Constitution of India, and it is anti-majority, and there is valid argument for that. Now, and you've seen how after the railways and say after the army, the maximum land which is with the Waqf. So yes, there are certain things which will definitely take the shape of discussion and debate, and I believe Parliament and respected forums should be there, and I agree with him on that. Not just Waqf, there are many other areas, say for example on temple control. So whether states can, whether say temples going out of the state control giving it to the temple bodies, how will like it has
And
been
even
for the
UCC,
others.
even
And for
UCC,
example, the
yeah.
UCC, which is enshrined in the constitution. So all of these are constitutional things which we are talking about. But unfortunately, the issue has been that when you speak about constitutional things, because secularism has been practiced as minoritism, so it is termed as communal. The issue is that. So, what I come to the basic conclusion is you are in an era where there is at least these topics which are being spoken about, which has always been in the constitution. So,
But I'm very happy that these topics, which even to a smart political student were not even aware about these topics.
as I
earlier,
said, Shantu,
which
because
are now like hot topics. At
because
least, so
their information was controlled by few.
yeah.
The media or the mainstream media was the only intermediary of information. That is no longer the situation. As I said, nobody today can claim to control the narrative completely. And this is where you see all these conversations now taking the shape of mainstream. And this is why I say that we are most democratic in true sense, and this is the most democratic time for us as a society and for at least for the globe.
Lovely. I think, yeah.
Namaste.
Yep.
Mayank Singh from London.
Can you
What-
be
Can you
louder?
your name?
Mayank Singh.
Mayank.
Maya, yeah, Maya.
What would you advise Washington Post, Guardian, BBC? Because you have given a lot of data, and this is what I also have experienced, but the view in these media organizations is completely opposite. It's a Hindu nationalist party who's authoritarian. So is there something that the democratic system, and I don't know what that would be, in India should do to garner support or to take the right picture to the world?
I think to my understanding, and maybe Pradeep can add, any newspaper that you mentioned, right? I think we both must have spoken against them, written against them. I think it's not that they are writing what they're writing because of lack of information. They have all the information available in the world. It is the narrative that they want to peddle, right? So, in fact, during Corona, I did a big research on a lot of Corona reporting that happened in 3 major newspapers of UK and 3 major newspapers of US. And I called them, I coined a term, right? That they were, when someone spread a Corona white, what was the term? Like, when you spread Corona, you are a super spreader, right? Spreader. He's a super spreader. I called them like a panic spreader. So they will write the number of cases in India with an absolute number, which will look big anyways, right? India has a huge population. The Indian cases crossed 500,000, and it's more than XXX. They never see per capita, right? Which if you see as a heading and a foreign traveler is traveling, you will say, oh my God, it's huge. One case in Delhi. They will just take one case in Delhi and make it look like as if the phenomena is happening in India. So that's a very common, very common phenomena. A lot of West media is out there. They have big desks in Delhi, and their only work to find holes here and there in India and make it look big like a big story. And the only counter is you keep filing counter stories and make sure a lot of Indian publication report about UK, report about US, what's happening bad in their society, their government. I think this, what's the girl's name? Palki Sharma, right? Her stories on Vantage Point became viral. So now I think that's the only solution. Sitting in India, you just tell about them and keep doing a commentary about them sitting in your shop. Yeah.
See, I'll just add to that in what Shantanu said. Please understand that India for me, Shantanuji, is no longer positioning itself as a swing power, it's positioning itself as a leading power. When you change the global status quo, those who had the control on the global status quo and the global narrative will definitely have problems. Definitely have problems. We did the most successful G20 presidency, which was beyond the imagination of those who controlled the global narrative. All of us are in the war of narratives, and now it is a hard fact which people are now slowly and gradually acknowledging that we as Indians and Bhartis are positioning ourselves as leading power in every sphere. We know our strength, we know where we have to work on. Now, when those who monopolize the narrative, they thought that they could control the narrative, are now being challenged. So say for example, you're talking about those 2 newspapers. There was a newspaper, I will tell you, when COVID was there, they said the Europe has imposed lockdown, which is very, very good. But when India imposed the lockdown, a year later they filed the story, why did India impose a lockdown without asking and consulting everybody? Yeah. So the hypocrisy in the age of social media is being seen. Yeah. And now it is not that we need appropriation for them from them in order to know whether we are good or not. We just launched the Chandrayaan on the south pole of the moon, which was not done by any country. So we are going forward. In the part of the narratives also, it is definitely a contest of narrative. And in the contest of narrative, eventually the best narrative will win. And this is what we have to do, as he rightly said. So these individuals, as he said, that they know what is happening, but the mindset with which they go, they first decide the conclusion and then they write the story.
That's the part of the
That is the part of their job.
And also, I think the whole debates with conclude with what our foreign minister recently said, right? Europe should come out of the fact, or come out of this dream that Europe's problems are world's problems and world's problems are not Europe's problem, right? So I think you have to call out, right? And smart people will get it.
We are building the maximum, we are building the roads at the fastest pace. We are leading in the digital payments. There is no sphere in any place where we are not leading. We are having the maximum fighter pilots. So you look at any sphere, we are competing with the world. In fact, at many places, we are doing better than the world. So when it comes to that a situation, even on the narratives now, we are challenging the world. We are contesting what they are writing about us. If they are ranking us, we will also now rank them on different parameters. And this is how it is there. So it is a level playing field, and we are taking the complete control from them and making it more democratic. That's what I can say. So what to the world we can say, India has arrived.
With that, some more questions. I see one hand here. Oh, Kuldeep ji, namaste. नहीं सर माइक नहीं चल रहा है अभी भी
चल रहा है?
Okay. Now yes.
Yeah, now it's working. My name is Kuldeep Shekhawat, and there's a small question. Well, from the world stage, let's get back to India. You have a group called India, controlling 60% of the vote share, that's what they're saying. So what do you guys think of what is going to happen in 24 when they come out with their agenda challenging Prime Minister Modi with their 60% vote share? And it seems like a problem if you look at it from an open perspective. But yes, he said that, okay, Indian voters are a bit intelligent. They're voting differently in different elections. So what will happen in the national elections 24?
So though I think that was my caveat not to ask any any predictions for the 2024 elections. But having said that, what Kuldeep ji is asking, if you have not heard, that against the current incumbent Prime Minister, the opposition has formed a coalition which they call in I. Which is India as acronym. And they hold, if you see on paper, a vote share of 60%. I'll say something and then Pradeep can add to it. There are multiple examples, Pradeep ji, where the opposition was holding bigger vote share, which was in UP when Samajwadi Party and Bahujan Samaj Party fought together, and they were holding almost 60-65% vote historically. I think, but people look at it differently. It's not a simple addition, and if I say in a cliche, say it's not always the arithmetic, it's the chemistry. So it will not add up, but it will certainly pose a challenge in certain states and certain seats, and that I think Pradeep can reflect upon which states will be tougher, which will be easier, and how it will pan out, without without having the temptation of predicting the election.
I will not predict them. I will definitely not do that. But let me, go to the root of it. I believe that at the root of it is how we look at elections and how we look at the polity. Do we look at polity where, say, two arch rivals who have traditionally been rivals, whose polity and whose political existence has been going against each other as politicians, when they come together, whether they're workers whose survival and existence on the ground is against fighting with each other, whether they come together or not. Which means that imagine a situation that these two parties or in the opposition come together, which is there.
Yeah.
And for years, for 10 years, the workers on the ground are fighting against each other. Are you telling me that when they come on the ground and shake hands on the stage, their workers will actually shake hands on the stage? Because they know that if they do shake hands on the stage, one of their political existence in that particular area will
Will be
go
wiped
into
out.
oblivion.
Yeah, for the next 5 years.
This was precisely the reason, Shantanu that when the leaders in Uttar Pradesh in 2019 shook hands, and on paper, let me tell you that this alliance, that was the strongest possible ever arithmetic alliance in a state where there are more chances of vote transfer than any other state. Even in that scenario, they could not transfer their votes completely, and it ended up benefiting their opponent, the BJP, by increasing its vote share. So, are you telling me that in a scenario where, that could not also succeed because the workers on the ground did not have a common ideological program, neither had a common alternate vision? This is why they failed. So, just mere arithmetic nowhere can succeed, because at the end of the day, as I tell you, the voters will ask, those who were fighting yesterday, जो कल तक अलग एक दूसरे के खिलाफ लड़ रहे थे, those who were arch rivals, why are they coming together? If there is an alternate vision they are providing, okay, well and good, it can be explored. So yes, it's a challenge, but what you've seen traditionally, that arithmetic alliances do not change the essence of the voting. They can depreciate it, or in times in 2019 even appreciate the opponent. That's why the seats of from 2014 to 19 in fact increased, and the vote share also increased.
I think a lot of time people also see one versus all, and it's become like a bechara,
Yes.
bechara narrative also. That
No, I would say, in fact, more than that, it is also about that the guy doing something correct. That's why the arch rivals are coming together. Also, another point, if I'll add you, if you look at all these parties do not have any geographical base outside their own area. So, say the party in Bengal, even if it ties up with the party in Delhi, even in campaigns in Delhi, it does not add up. The parties in Delhi which were against each other, if they add up and if they tie, it depends, and it is contingent that whether their workers tie or not. We saw in UP that the workers ended up voting the Bharatiya Janata Party, and that's why its vote share increased. This is where you see that in Punjab they're fighting against each other and still have not arrived at the seat sharing formula. They wanted a convener, and the convener could not be appointed yet. So it's not that easy. It is definitely not easy.
Quite complicated. And the point I think the Pradeep has mentioned, if you don't see, for a political worker, election is his party, is his chandi, right? If for 5 years, 10 years you don't contest as a political party on a seat, and my partner party is fighting on that seat, I as a worker will be wiped out, because that's the only time I get money, I get influence, my posters are printed. But if the other party is, so I think it's not very easy on the ground. He's very
also, Kuldeepji, just 2 points, because 1 point, only in 2 scenarios can there be a significant threat. A, that one of these regional parties defeat the central party in a state where it was in a leading position. So, is there a scenario where the central party can be wiped out from a state against a regional alternative? Now, when you dig deep down inside, you saw that in Tamil Nadu, the central party did not have any votes last time. Telangana also, there were hardly any vote. Andhra Pradesh also, there were hardly any vote. So, the scenario